Hello, everyone. Hope you all are doing great. Welcome to our session, Meet the Global Leader. So, this webinar is about sharing professional lessons, experiences of people who are from different parts of the world. We share their stories, their journeys from their student life, and the person they are right now. So, our audience, who are mainly students studying at the university, they have an opportunity through this webinar to learn some lessons, professional lessons, and some insights about how people are doing things, how they have been, implementing skills in their professional life, and the things they have seen so far. So today we have invited Ms. Courtney Finger. She is actually founder of Fingar Direct Investment Limited, and she's an also international journalist and investment expert. Also, she's a actually it's a rare opportunity for us. Basically, she is a global expert on foreign direct investment, working with leaders in business and government who make international investment happen. She is a media commentator, video presenter, keynote speaker, and whatnot. She has business related experience with more than 20 years. So she's also guest lecturing at international universities and business schools. Ms. Courtney, welcome to our session, and what a great pleasure for us to have you with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Great. So before going to the main session, can you share a little bit about yourself and how was your student life? If you just keep and share a brief about your life as a student.
Sure. Well, I had two chapters of my student life. I'm originally from the United States, from the state of Alabama. For my undergraduate degree, I went to our main state university, the University of Alabama, where I received an academic scholarship. So that was very helpful. I studied journalism, which was always my passion from the time I was a child. I always intended to be a journalist. And I was lucky that our local state university has a very good journalism school. So after that, I started to work a bit. I did a little stint in London as a kind of backpacker traveler. And then I got my first journalism job in Washington, covering environmental policy and politics. But I was very keen to get back to the UK after my brief stint there. So I decided to do a master's degree in the UK. So then after this few years of beginning my working life, I went to the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, which is an incredibly beautiful city, great historic university dating back to the 1500s. And there I got a master's in international and European politics. And I enjoyed both chapters of my student life. They were very different scenarios, different types of university, different courses. But the combination of those two things, journalism, studying international politics, set me up very well for my subsequent career.
Great. Can you share some of the experiences when you were a student regarding what helped you develop some skills that shaped you, the person you are right now?
Sure. Well, in my undergraduate degree, the interesting thing about journalism is although you take academic courses, it's a very vocational type of degree. And to get a job as a journalist, you can't just say, well, I have my degree, someone give me a job at a newspaper or magazine. You have to show that you have practical experience. So throughout those 4 years of the undergraduate degree, I tried to get every type of practical journalism experience that I could. So I did internships at the local TV station. I was very excited to get a summer internship at CNN, the major international broadcaster, where I helped their investigative team with research. It was a dream come true, honestly, at that time. But I worked for the yearbook, which is a kind of book that's produced in American high schools and universities that recaps the year for all the students. So I worked there. I did writing for newspapers. I worked for the university's communications office, writing for their alumni I was very busy in that time, grabbing every opportunity I could to do practical experience. And I think that served me really well. And it's something that I always in mentoring really encourage students to do, because I know it's hard to juggle the academic courses and your student work with doing side jobs and practical experience. But in my view, it's really invaluable. At Edinburgh, it was a little different. It was a 1-year master's degree. But I also did practical things there. Also, it was a combination at Edinburgh. It was a very expensive degree, and I needed to work, to fund myself. So there I was doing practical journalism work as well, but also doing everything, serving pizzas in a restaurant, everything I could to sort of fund myself. But again, I think even a job like that, that's not directly related to the studies, it gives work experience, teaches you about juggling, teaches you about responsibility. What happened at Edinburgh, it turned out to be quite fateful for me, because I was trying to do freelance journalism to keep that experience. And I ended up doing freelance writing for a brand new magazine at the Financial Times called FDI Magazine, Foreign Direct Investment Magazine. And so I was writing some stories for that magazine while I was a student. And it turned out that 2 years later, when they wanted to hire a full-time editor for that magazine, they came and offered me the job. So that's a really tangible way that I would say doing these kinds of practical experience jobs, freelancing, whatever it is, can really help set a student up for eventual success. It definitely worked well for me, even though it made life a little bit busy and stressful at the time.
Great. So, you have like 20 plus years of media and everyday experience. You have like travel 80 plus countries visited on assignment, 50 plus conferences as a speaker. So I mean, like it's such like a enriching like experiences you have. So if I put on like you and that, how did you start your career? And from that career, like you said, you were a journalist, but as a journalist, how do you see it that shaped you the person you are right now? And if someone wants to be an international journalist, what are the skills in current world students especially should have to be an international journalist? And for also, apart from skills, what are the how should they prepare themselves in terms of like what should they study, what should they like follow, stuff like that?
It's a really great question. In my case, I was always very clear that that's what I wanted to do. So it did allow me to kind of prepare. It's a little bit different in the United States. If you want to be a journalist, you really need to have a journalism degree. So that's why I did that. I'm not saying you can't get a journalism job without it, but it's very difficult. So in the US, there are a lot of journalism schools and universities focused on that. So you need the degree, but as I mentioned, you also really need the practical experience. What I found in the UK when I arrived here is it wasn't so common to have a journalism degree. It was more common to get a degree in another subject, English, history, economics, politics, something of that nature. And then you try to segue into being a journalist from that. So I don't know the situation in Bangladesh. I imagine it's more like the latter than the so I think if someone is clear they want to be a journalist and they have access to courses and degrees in journalism, that's very worthwhile. But if not, you can also think about what type of journalist you want to be. If you want to be a business journalist, you would really have an advantage over the competition if you had a degree in business or politics or whatever you want to cover. And then you can supplement that with maybe an outside course on journalism, some kind of training. And again, that practical experience, getting an internship early on helps a lot. Trying to do freelance writing. The difficulty with media now is the environment is very challenging. Like most industries, media will be impacted very heavily by artificial intelligence, with a lot of media companies thinking maybe we can just generate a lot of copy using AI. What do we need journalists for? And that really could impact the landscape. What's also changed since I started out is, of course, everything is multimedia now. So now journalists are expected to have a very wide range of skills. So it's not enough just to be, good at print, at writing. Should also have experience with podcasts. Journalists are usually expected to host podcasts or be guests. Video work, journalists are expected to sometimes produce videos or appear in videos talking about their work and chairing conferences. So you really need to try to have this wide range of skills because you're no longer hiding, as it were, behind your keyboard. I've liked this evolution because I enjoy all those platforms, not having to choose anymore about, am I a print journalist? Am I a broadcast journalist? I'm a radio journalist. Now you can do all of those things, which is very exciting, but it does mean you have to try to have skills in all of those areas if you really want to make it as a journalist.
Absolutely amazing, and that it's all about real up to date with the current trend. It's very important for them as well. So in whatever profession they want to explore, or they want to put a good mark, doing research and developing his skills and implementing it is very important. So for students who are at the university, especially in Bangladesh, sometimes it is difficult for them to choose a career, because say for example, my major was in marketing, but during when I was a student, I didn't know I have some specific set of career that I can choose. uh,
Mhm.
Say for example, if I want to go to sales or digital marketing, i had to I have to have some basic information or knowledge or skills to be good at to take an entry in the job. But in most cases, irrespective of different majors in their universities, students in most cases don't know what are the careers. If they want to pursue professional career,
Mhm.
what are the areas they can explore after their graduation. As most of them don't know, after graduation it is very difficult for them. They are in frustrating state that they're not getting job, but they're seeing that they lack some skills and knowledge. So for that, actually, it is very important during the student life, to explore different areas to find their best interest. So if you see, you interviewed a lot of people. So if you share a few success stories from your journalism career. So if you share one or two stories of successful people, and why did they become successful in terms of their professional life, or in terms of their entrepreneurial life. If you share some of the examples, best examples, and the reasons for their success, that
Okay.
would help students.
Sure. I'm probably drawing a little blank to name check people, but I think there are common factors that you usually find in these highly successful people. Just to step back to your point about the students maybe not knowing at the outset what they want to do. That's obviously okay. And there are many fields that, business studies, economics, statistics, everything is about big data these days. So for example, going down a road of a degree like that is going to open up a wealth of opportunity that you can go many different directions. And I do think the student time can be used to take courses in different things, but also do internships and test out different areas to see where that's that match with passion and skill set. And that's really what makes people successful. So they have a passion for what they do, and that could be anything. It could be in politics, it could be in business, it could be as an entrepreneur, it could even be in NGOs in the charity sector. Whatever it is, the people who succeed really care about what they do and they have a passion for it. But we have to be realistic, and that passion also has to match your skill sets as a person. So finding what you do really well and finding that match between what you do really well and what you enjoy, that is the recipe to success. And also just putting in the work and doing the small things. That's what you find also in almost every successful person. You occasionally have people that strike it rich or become successful because they had advantages, family wealth, or they're lucky. But in general, people that come from humble beginnings to become successful are always the most impressive people, the most fascinating people. And what separates them from other people is they may have a big vision and a dream, they may have talent, but they put in the daily work. So it's the micro as well as the macro. And a lot of people will think of the macro, the end division. How cool would it be to have this job? But they don't always want to get up every day and do those small things that you need to do that build the blocks to your success. And that's the less glamorous side. And especially when it comes to entrepreneurs, you know, for every big success story of an entrepreneur who sold their company to Google or whatever, there are many others who just struggled and struggled and struggled for years. And maybe not make it. So I do think you have to also hedge. I, in my mind, always had, here's my plan A, but I have B, C, D, E, all the way through the alphabet. I know that's probably not a specific enough answer, but these are common denominators that you find in my experience with successful people. And I guess the other really important attribute, I see this with leaders, whether they're political leaders or business leaders, is the best leaders understand what they don't know, and they surround themselves with expertise. They don't assume they know everything about every topic. So they seek out advice and expertise from people who really know. And those are the successful leaders in my view.
Absolutely amazing. Absolutely, you're right. So if I go to another topic, like what have been the most interesting stories written and favorite places visited and the most entertaining people interviewed by you?
This is a fun question. So I was lucky in my time at Financial Times, which is 15 years of my career, so maybe the biggest chunk of it, to travel the world. And the great thing about the topic of foreign direct investment is it does put you right in the middle of business leaders, but also political leaders, and it's international by its whole being. Probably the most interesting, challenging, and memorable experiences is around the time of 2009 to 2011. I was doing reporting on economic reconstruction in Iraq. So it was 6 years post-war, but things were still very messy and difficult there. And as a business journalist, I was used to kind of swanning around conference rooms and hotels and convention centers, not putting on a flak jacket and going in a helicopter and being on military base, but visiting, you know, cities that had unfortunately been destroyed and where things were still dangerous. So that was very eye-opening for me. But I also of really amazing people, Iraqis who were trying their best in really difficult circumstances to try to rebuild the country, to try to find normality. So those experiences, and I went several times and wrote several reports, stand out the most to me because intellectually it was interesting. Post-conflict reconstruction is a topic that I'm really drawn to because the stakes are so high and the role that FDI can play. But I think also got a bit into my heart emotionally. And then a very similar country, for unfortunate reasons, is Ukraine. So pre-war in Ukraine, for the past 15 years, I spent a lot of time in Ukraine, visiting all parts of the country and dealing with the political leaders and the cities there and in the national level. And Ukraine is very much like Iraq, which is a big country with a huge amount of potential, amazing people, but sort of plagued by conflict, meddling neighbors that cause it difficulty, and always at risk of some partition. And I have not been to that country since the war started there, but it stays very close to me, emotionally, professionally, intellectually. So those are the two countries, I guess, that I've spent the most time in that impacted me the most, but are also the most fascinating as a journalist. When it comes to entertaining, Ukrainians, despite the difficult situation they're in, are always entertaining. So you'll never have a boring interview or experience with Ukrainians. When it comes to other political leaders, there are some that you would expect. So leaving aside any assessment of his politics or anything, Boris Johnson, the former Prime Minister of the UK, is a highly entertaining interviewee and that's when you see those types of politicians whose appeal is based on charm. You usually find that up close. You never know what he's going to say. He's entertaining, can be very insightful, can be evasive, but never boring. So interviewed him many times, beginning when he was the mayor of London. And I would probably class him as the most overall entertaining character to interview, even if you come away with it saying, I'm not sure he's telling me the truth.
It's totally all right. Uh, so, as you have visited so many countries, have you been to Bangladesh?
Sadly not, but I would very much like to. And it's a real oversight because apart from being an interesting country, and I have no doubt a beautiful country, it's also interesting for FDI being such a large country with vast potential. So I do hope to visit sometime. You all will have to invite me.
Yeah, definitely. And uh, putting that on point is, like it is sometimes people get confused about foreign direct investment and in regular investment.
Mhm.
So if you shed some light on like if Bangladesh can get a good foreign direct investment or for any country basically, so
Mhm.
how FDI can transform the economy of a country, and
Sure.
in general, what is the difference between for FDI and normal investment?
Okay, sure. Well, both types of investment are important. And in a successful economy, you would have organic growth of local companies and them investing in the country, but you will also have foreign direct investment. So, foreign direct investment sounds kind of niche and complicated, but it's actually very simple. It's a company from one country, headquartered in one country, setting up some kind of operation or investing in another country. So, there are different methods. So it could be through a joint venture, it could be through a merger or an acquisition. But the real FDI, as I tend to refer to it, is what's called greenfield FDI, and that is setting up a physical facility. So that could be an office, an R&D center, a factory, because that is the job creating productive FDI that's really bringing something tangible. And that's really all it is. Now, the advantages of FDI, there can be downsides to FDI. They can be exploiting the local economy. It can distort a local economy, but the benefits usually outweigh the downsides. And the benefits are that job creation, especially if enough jobs are not being created by the local companies. Again, if it's greenfield, traditional FDI is creating jobs, obviously bring investing in the economy. So then therefore paying corporate taxes and there's the benefits in that. Also bringing skills, technology, expertise. And that's probably the real advantage, especially for developing countries, because local national companies may have certain expertise and skills. But of course, when you widen the pool to the whole international business world, you open your horizons a lot further, again, for that kind of expertise, for the training that they may provide to the local workforce. And very often, foreign companies will pay higher salaries than local companies. And this is the case not just in developing countries, but even in places like the US, where there's suspicion even there of what foreign investment means. Sometimes people think they're taking something from us. But in the US, studies have shown that 8 million workers in the US are actually employed by foreign companies, and they have substantially higher average salary than those working for American companies. So the advantages are many. You just have to hedge against any of the kind of ill effects. So a country like Bangladesh does attract foreign investment, but in my view, could be getting a lot more. If you think about the size of the country, therefore, it's a huge marketplace. It's a very large consumer market, a big strategically located country capabilities already in manufacturing, but the country needs to be able to move up the value chain. And that's what the FDI success stories have done. So started with basic assembly, basic manufacturing, moved up to advanced manufacturing, moved up into technology, moved up into services, and the kind of looking for examples in the neighborhood. Obviously, your neighbor India has managed to do that very well. And there's actually no reason that
Yes.
Bangladesh couldn't follow a similar path in terms of moving up the value chain and being an FDI success story.
Wonderful. That's really impressive. And yes, the thing that you said, that, as you know, like the whole world is transforming into, like fourth industrial revolution. So many development are also be needed in few sectors. So putting that in mind, how are geopolitical tensions and economic uncertainties impacting everyday flows?
They're impacting them majorly. I mean, geopolitics has always been a factor, but I can't think of a time, maybe after 9/11 in the early 2000s. Apart from that, I can't think of a time in my few decades of studying FDI where the impact of geopolitics has loomed so large. And there's a number of reasons for that. I mean, there's some tangible impacts of sanctions on Russia. For example, because of the war in its war on Ukraine is distorting supply chains, energy supplies, and there's all kinds of implications that just go on and on. But more importantly, at a time of geopolitical strife, it heightens investors' perceptions and their actual realistic assessments of risk. So if the world seems a bit uncertain and risk is very high, they have to be very careful about where they expand. They adjust supply chains accordingly. They do a flight to safety. And what we see in FDI flows is in times of turmoil, whether that's financial turmoil like the financial crisis of 2008 or geopolitical crises, you see a flight to safety where you see upticks in inward investment in places like the US, the UK, Australia, Canada, Germany, and you see decreases in FDI in developing countries or countries that are perceived fairly or unfairly as having a higher risk level. And this is usually problematic because the countries where you will see the declines in FDI in times of risk are the countries that actually need FDI the most. So when it comes to the current geopolitical situation, we're seeing big impacts in Europe, understandably, because of the war in Ukraine. So Ukraine itself had a thriving technology sector, and a lot of those companies have had to leave, or foreign companies that might have outsourced IT services or had IT facilities in are like Poland, for example. Then you also have a large wave of Ukrainian refugees in Poland and elsewhere that are adding to but potentially distorting the labor market. So the impacts are very high. And again, on supply chains, when you get into situations of war, but also sanctions, that disrupts heavily supply chains. And I guess the other important point that I haven't highlighted that's relevant is, of course, the COVID pandemic, which was not a geopolitical issue, but certainly a major event, already heightened investors' thoughts about risk and about supply chains. So what we're seeing is a compounding impact of that major disruption, the change in corporate strategies that we saw as a result of that. And that showed the risk of being overexposed to certain locations like China, or being overexposed to any location. So they started to try to secure supply chains, think more carefully about their corporate footprint. And now you have geopolitical tensions, but also economic problems, high interest rates, growth issues in many economies. So if you take all those things together, it has had a depressed effect on FDI because companies are becoming more cautious.
Great. Like as you have been to countries, according to you, what are some emerging sectors or regions attracting significant FDI investment?
Well, one answer probably won't surprise you. That's AI. So if we look at jobs being created globally through FDI, the biggest demand, or what companies are needing as they expand internationally, are AI skills. So those are the skills. And if we kind of come back to the purpose of our conversation, the kind of skills that students really need to have, and to help secure jobs, is AI skills is probably number one. And AI related jobs are expanding rapidly. The country doing the best at attracting AI related FDI projects is India. So again, another reason to kind of, that's very much based on skills, cost, quality ratio. We also have seen big increases in renewable energy investment. That's been a growth sector for a number of years. So there's a lot of opportunity. And actually the big increase in renewable energy investment, which is driven by a number of factors, is actually a big opportunity for large developing countries. And if we look at Africa, for example, which also has underperformed in terms of the FDI that it needs in order to meet development goals, is having a real boom time right now in renewable energy. So there are many areas of opportunity, but I would highlight those two as the biggest growth areas right now.
Definitely. And uh, in terms of when there is FDI, there risk or risks are associated with it. So, can you share some best practices for managing risk and ensuring successful FDI projects?
Yeah, this is a great, very important question, because, as we discussed, there are big opportunities from FDI, but there are definitely risks. And when it comes to FDI policy, it's very hard for governments to get the balance right, because you want to be open to FDI. You want to have a legislative environment and a business environment that's conducive to FDI so that you attract the investment that you need. At the same time, you have to make sure that there isn't exploitation. And a common areas, of course, that we see in developing countries is you'll see scandals and incidents and risks surrounding environmental damage, for example. So some companies may enjoy the fact that environmental legislation is looser in developing countries, and therefore employ practices that they would not be able to employ in Western Europe, for example. So you have to be very diligent on, for example, environmental impact, especially when you're looking at the resource sector, big production facilities, those kind of projects that really could have an environmental impact. Also, exploitation of workers. So again, you have to tread a balance between liberalized employment policies, because companies want to feel they can hire and fire as they need to expand or to develop their business. But you want to protect your own workers and make sure that they are not exploited in terms of number of hours, whether it's child labor, whether it's overwork, fair pay for overtime, safety in manufacturing facilities, that the workers are cared for. And although, especially when it comes to production, companies are also looking for cheaper labor, which is a major driver for setting up in foreign countries. You want to make sure that the workers are still paid fairly. This balancing act is very difficult. And what we've seen, although we've seen in this time of volatility and heightened risk, we've seen companies be more cautious. We've also seen a big explosion of anti-FDI policies. So in times of geopolitical tension and economic volatility, you often see national policies become much more protectionist. We're also seeing a wave of populist politicians that tend to trend towards protectionism. And this is actually making the global environment less hospitable for FDI, which of course is then creating a vicious circle where you get less FDI. So the challenge for policymakers, again, is to protect your natural landscape, protect your environment, protect your workers and your people, but not making the environment so restrictive that you scare off capital that you need. And to be fair, it's not an easy balancing act, especially because the public doesn't often understand something like FDI, and it can really be held hostage by populist politicians, and you can create a lot of scaremongering about foreign money, foreign companies, and all this. Now, some countries. There's some FDI success stories that I would point to, that I think have created a good balance. One I always point to is Poland. Poland, through successive governments, and even whether the governments have come from the right or left, overall have created a very good environment for FDI over the years, and they've really seen the benefits. This is a country that has seen growing levels of FDI pretty much for 20 years, in line with economic growth, which means they're running their economy very well, which gives investors certainty. They are very open to FDI, but in general, the Polish people have benefited. So I would point to Poland as being good stewards of FDI and getting that balance right. They're bad examples, where again, the policies have been so restrictive that it's scaring off capital that those countries actually need. So it's really all about that balancing act.
Absolutely. And you are an entrepreneur yourself. So if you share, like one of the objective of School of Entrepreneurship Development in Bangladesh is to promote entrepreneurial spirit among youths in Bangladesh. So if you share in brief about your entrepreneurial journey and what uh, Finger Direct Investment Limited does, if you share about your organization and your entrepreneurial journey, that can like inspire students as well as small and medium entrepreneurs in Bangladesh, it would be really helpful to know your journey.
Okay, thank you. So I'm a almost exactly 1 year into this journey. And it's been a real education for myself, because for all of my career, I worked for big corporations, so big media companies. I was a salaried employee. Going independent was therefore very scary. It's been exciting, and it's been a great way for me to combine my different skills and different interests, because ultimately, although I'm a media person, I'm at heart an FDI person. So that can restrict you a lot if you want to have a traditional media job, if you want to be so focused on one topic. By going independent, it's a way for me to stay in my area that I love, which is FDI, but work in that industry in a new way. So although I'm still a media commentator and journalist in a freelance capacity, I now am freer to do consulting. So I work directly with governments, for example, helping advise them on how to attract foreign direct investment. I also, through my jobs, as you mentioned earlier, attended and chaired and moderated and was a keynote speaker at a lot of international events. Now I can do that directly and as a professional and be paid directly by event organizers rather than just representing whatever company I work for. So that's been great. But I've also carved out a part of my business to help advise on business events. So I may moderate it, but also write agendas because I know the subject matter and help shape what could be a compelling business event. So Fingar Direct Investment, which I set up again a year ago, sort of combines those activities, which is a bit of communications media, communications advisory work, direct FDI advisory work, and consulting. I also offer trainings in FDI. So again, helping usually governments, entities understand how to better attract FDI, and in particular, tell their story to investors, and the event work. But all of it is all very centered on the world of FDI. It's been challenging because it's a new way of working. It's a new way of my contacts in the industry engaging with me and me engaging with them. And also the roller coaster of not having a guaranteed salary, which I should have seen coming, but was a real shock to my system. And then as an entrepreneur, you do everything. You're handling invoicing, administration. These are things I never had to deal with as just a journalist employed by a big media company. Chasing invoices, dealing with clients who may not pay right away, and all the implications of that. So I feel like in my first year, there was a major learning curve. It was not very easy, if I'm honest. There were many challenging times, but I stuck with it. And I've learned from, I made mistakes as well. I learned from the challenges and mistakes. So now that I'm entering year 2, it's getting easier because, again, I'm learning what kind of projects I want to do, what clients I want to work with, who will pay an invoice, who will not. And I've learned to outsource the things I'm not good at. So I got a virtual personal assistant. Has made a world of difference, so she can do those admin things for me. I have a fantastic intern in Uzbekistan supporting me with research. So it's a juggling act. It's a challenge, but can be very, very rewarding once you get through those challenges.
Absolutely amazing. And you know how successful an entrepreneur has become. Most cases, they share the same thing, like scary, because all of a sudden you are out of your comfort zone and you have to think the same network in a different way, because
Yeah.
like you represented maybe one company, but when you represent yourself as an entrepreneur, it is quite different. So
Yeah.
putting that in, and also the thing that you mentioned, that you have interned somewhere else, and like you have a very diversified maybe team. So you are a very successful person right now. You have come to a long way. You have networks. You work with government agencies. But like for students particularly who are at university, like maybe in every country it is the same. Getting an opportunity, it doesn't matter whether it is paid or unpaid, is very important for them.
Yeah.
Say for example, the personality like you, if you go to a university as a speaker to connect and engage with students, it helps them like to build their confidence. Information or connection, it comes later, but build their confidence. Oh, I know that person, I know that personality, she's like amazing. And it actually how it builds the confidence is like they associated, I know that person. So if I have met like say for example 100 CEOs, local, international, whatever their background is, but it is going to help build my confidence in a different level. Like because I know CEOs, when then if I go for like a professional sector, it will help me because I know CEOs. Like yeah,
Yeah.
help me. Like break my anxiety and like frustration, stuff like that. But so from your point of view, how do you see it? I mean, as a your responsibility to the society, to your community, to the world as well. So uh, 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 like how you contribute apart from like your business or other stuff for the community, say for example for the people in need, I would say students, like because industry academia gap is wide.
Yes.
So especially developing country like us, it's like far wider. So because when students get the opportunity to how business function, how it operates, it will help them like if they want to pursue for professional career, or if they want to pursue entrepreneurial career sector, what skills and knowledge they should have in a minimum level. So it will help them to like decide in that case. So if you share like personality like you, how you can contribute for the community, for the students, with information, with accessing them with information resources that may like change their lives or change the help transform a country in a different way. So if you share like your thoughts on that.
Sure. Well, first of all, you're very right about building these networks, and it's actually never too early to get that networking experience because networking is so important to business success. So I would encourage students to go to any events that are open to them, career days. Companies are becoming more and more aware of the importance of engaging with the youth. So to look out for business events that they may be welcome to and to start to build those connections, but also just learn in a way the art of networking. But in terms of my own self, I am very passionate about mentoring because I know how hard it is. And in my background, I didn't necessarily have those business connections. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't have much of a template or people in that environment who had worked internationally. So I was trying to figure out a lot of things for myself. I had great professors who helped me a lot and gave me advice, but I didn't have a lot of people that I could lean on that had done a path like this. And because of that, I try to offer that path, or at least assist that path for other young people, because I know how hard it is. So I think mentoring is the way to give back. So doing talks like this, talking at I've spoken at career days and talks at both my universities that I went to. And at one that I did at Edinburgh University, I subsequently hired a really bright young girl who came up to me and pitched herself and networked with me. A year later, I gave her a job. So these things can work. But I try to do talks like this. I try to support through mentoring, especially one-on-one. So I would encourage, the students watching it to reach out to me for advice or a pep talk. And I'm, supportive, of course, of both male and female students, but being female and knowing the unique challenges also with trying to make it in the world as a young girl, a young woman. I try to be particularly engaged in supporting young women in their journey. So I would say to the students, don't be scared to reach out, because it's an open door.
Absolutely. Yeah, like this is important because uh, they should also be proactive, like how to reach out to some people they're
Mhm.
interested in, how to like yeah, create make connection and
Yes,
utilize it for a better in a better way. So
absolutely.
as like as we're almost at the end of the session, if you like like work with governments, you are working with governments and like high level investors, big personalities, so about like what are the skills they actually look for among like young people, among students to work with them. So if you suggest or give some advice, what skills and knowledge students who are currently at the university should develop. It's not necessary that they are in Bangladesh or wherever they are, to like broaden their outlook, that go beyond their boundaries. So in terms of global perspective, if you advise some skills and knowledge they should develop before graduation, that would be really helpful.
Sure. There are a lot of different skills, and it may depend on industry, but something that's important now across the board is fluency with data. So everything is about big data, data-driven decision making, harnessing data, and that applies to every industry. And that is also a big change that's happened in journalism. I eventually morphed into a data journalist, for example, that I could have never predicted that at the outset of my career when I was doing more feature based writing. So data is at the heart of everything now. So I would encourage every student, no matter which industry they'd like to go in, to take a statistics course, to take courses in big data, and try to gain data fluency. But I think when it comes to what employers are looking for, there are those hard skills. So it's important to think about what those jobs of the future might look like and be ready with those skills. But it's more important the attributes. I think showing dedication, a work ethic, being proactive, showing that you're reliable, that you're eager to learn. Those are the kind of traits that always caused me, for example, to offer a young person a job. And those are attributes that would set a person up for success no matter which industry they want to go in.
Great, absolutely. Like relevant that future is going, and at the same time, investors are investing, like tech startups that are working with AI data. So this is very, very because everyone has to like react with or adapt with the changing demands of the like requirements from business or from like from the customer side or from the companies. So it's very important to like this is smartness to keep ourselves up to date with the changing environment. I notice
Definitely.
like there are so many things that actually has been shared in online about what are the skills that will be necessary to have
Yes,
after 5 years, after 10 years. So students should like eye for that.
absolutely.
That way they can like, and there are so many free options to learn from online to develop themselves. This is very important, and
Yes,
like above all, when they actually know themselves, love themselves, then it is possible to explore or give time for the, like for their development. This is very
definitely.
important. So Miss
Definitely.
Courtney, thank you so much. Like you are a very busy person, but like your contribution to see things through your eyes that you have seen so far, like around the traveling around the world through your professional experiences is very helpful. And like this information is actually going to broaden the mindset of the students, of Bangladesh, and it is going to help them to like decide how far they can go. Like the world is there, the sky is the limit. So
Yes.
thank you so much, and definitely we'd like to see you in Bangladesh.
I hope
The expertise you have would be a very valuable things to have you in Bangladesh, and we'd love to see you in Bangladesh and explore the beauty of Bangladesh. So maybe one day it is going to happen very soon.
I hope so. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I've really enjoyed talking with you, and I hope there's something useful in it for those watching. But let's keep in touch.
Definitely. Thank you so much, and have a good day.
Thank you too.